Hi, everyone. To respect your time, I want to make sure that we get started right at the top of the hour. There are still people coming in and joining us, so welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited about this first session for fall 2020 because we how important it is to become a member of professional organizations and make sure that we are connecting with others who have the same passion and interests as we do. Without further ado, Dr. Hield, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce Camille. And Camille, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Good morning. I am so excited to introduce Miss Camille. Simply because she's so accomplished and knowledgeable in the field of ECE. She brings with us 30 years of experience working with teachers, administrators, children, families, and communities in New York State. And within those 30 years, she's had many roles, including teacher, director, trainer, mentor, observer, speaker, advocate, board member, and today our presenter. She holds several part-time positions as an adjunct faculty in the early childhood department at Central Arizona College, Ashford University, and the City University of New York School of Professional Studies. She also works for Easter Seals Blake Foundation as an educational coordinator. We're so honored to have her. She supported the opening of 2 early learning centers located on Signal Peak and Superstition Mountain campuses of Central Arizona College through the NAEYC accreditation process. So again, just so excited to have her. She was a former principal and founder of an early childhood training company, and she has experience with running a small business and growing a small business while serving the ECE community. She has 19 years of service on the local affiliate board of the New York AEYC and has 4 years on the state board of the Arizona AEYC. It is my true honor, Camille, to welcome you today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Helen. Thank you, Dr. Shipley, for inviting me to do this presentation. So I would like to start with thanks for that great introduction. I really do appreciate it, and it does sound like I did a lot, and I have, but when you're doing what you love, it really is not even a job at all, and it's not for me. It really is my passion. And so I'm going to talk about professional membership, but I'm going to tell it through my own story, because I think that's the best way to just get the message across. And so hopefully I make a difference in everyone's professional development and professional commitment to the early childhood field. So here I go. Let's see. So after that great introduction, this is a little bit about my work. I think Dr. Held, you said it all. I have done lots of things. When I was in New York, most of my career I spent in New York. So I was part of their quality rating and improvement system. So I did do ITERS, the Infant Toddler Environmental Rating Scale, and the Early Childhood Environmental Rating Scale, the ITERS and the ECHRS, as well as the FECHRS for Quality Stars New York. Like you mentioned, I'm adjunct faculty at a few different places, City University of New York, where I am teaching in the early childhood department. That's the only place I teach is in the early childhood department anywhere, but in their program, it's their master's degree program because they have their own administrator's credential. So I'm teaching coursework for them to meet those requirements. At Central Arizona College, I teach on the associate's level, and at Ashford, I teach on the bachelor's level. So I'm teaching at all different levels of higher education. I am an NAFCC observer for their accreditation process, and I do a lot of work with Head Start. And I'm a CDA instructor and observer, professional development specialist. I am very proud to say that after I moved to Arizona, which is almost 4 years now, my company in New York, which still is in existence, went through the CDA Gold Standard process. And so I was a very big part of that, writing the curriculum and being there for the observation, which was something definitely worth going back to New York for. And so I did go through that process as well. So for me, like I said, even though it's in my work, it's all about my passion of providing quality care for young children and supporting families. So I did grow up in New York, actually in New York City, lived on Long Island, and then we moved out here to Chandler. And so I'm living in the valley where it's like supposed to be 110 degrees today. I don't know what's going on there, but I wasn't ready to retire. And so because I was so involved in the local and this on the state and local level of NAEYC, it made sense to me when I came out here, or even before I got out here, to reach out to the president of the Arizona Association for the Education of Young Children, because that professional organization is my go-to for anything. I've always used their resources, and I thought if I was going to be looking for a job, which I had to, what better place to start with the state affiliate. So even though I'm out here, I still stayed connected, which to me is a vital part of, you know, being a member of a professional organization. So my volunteer work actually these days is taking up a little bit more time than my real work, but living in New York, I was on the state board, the New York State AEYC board, for a few years. I served as accreditation chair, and I also served as the region representative. So New York, if you're not familiar, we have different regions. So I live downstate, which is where New York City is, and Long Island. And so I was the region rep for downstate. But then I was also the president of our local affiliate, Suffolk AEYC, which is located on Long Island. And so that was at our annual conference where we made picture frames, and that was my board back then. And that was actually my last board meeting before I moved to Arizona. The other photo on the upper right is me here in Arizona now, and I was the treasurer at the time, and I was, this was our annual meeting. I was teaching, and still I'm teaching at Central Arizona College, and those are my students. I always feel that it's important just to get professional development opportunities out there, and so I put it out to all my classes, and we actually took a field trip. And so it was on a Saturday, and I brought my class. We met at the site, and they participated in the event. And those students, like I said, in Central Arizona College, I teach on the associate's level. So my students there are, like new to college, and this is their first early childhood coursework. And so I really do believe that you have to embrace it from the get-go. You have to understand that it's, and hopefully it's a passion, and it's not just a job, and it's all about networking and making connections. So so those are my students. And at the bottom photo, there we are again, and that's at the House of Representatives. So every year we sponsor a day at the legislature, and the early childhood organizations come together. We meet in Phoenix, and we meet with representatives, senators. There's training. It's a lot of advocacy work, and it was a great introduction to my students. So that was another professional development event that I offered out to them, and we ended up, coming here. So I am a member, and I know this presentation I'm definitely going to focus on NAEYC, but I am a member of several professional organizations. So NAEYC, as you see, that's their logo on the left. I'm very involved with early learning accreditation, and I'm going to speak about that. That's really, I do a lot of work with supporting programs through NAEYC accreditation. But when you become a member of NAEYC, which is the national organization, and that for all of you is the National Association for the Education of Young Children, you then have to choose an affiliate. And so not every state has an affiliate, but there are 48 state affiliates around the country. And so I am a member of the Arizona Association for the Education of Young Children. Most states have one state affiliate. In Arizona, we have two. So we have Arizona AEYC, and then we have Southern Arizona AEYC. So I'm also a member of SASE. And of course, I could never leave my New York connections. So I'm also a member of New York's AEYC. I'm also a member of 0 to 3, and 0 to 3 is the largest organization that supports young children and their families, infants and toddlers, and you know, you'll hear me talk about it a lot. You have to know what your interests are, and for me, you know, I'm very I like to focus my work on early learning, brain development, infant toddler development. I'm also a program for infant toddler care trainer, so I'm trained in that theory. And I have to tell you that for me, I just feel that if you have a passion and you have an interest, you have to you have to feel it in your heart, and then you take it from there. And for me, becoming a member of 0 to 3 with all of their fabulous resources was something that I needed, not only personally, but professionally as well. I'm also a member of the National Association for Family Childcare. That comes from my work with family childcare providers and being an accreditation observer. And just recently, within this year, I became a member of the Council for Exceptional Children Division for Early Childhood. And that passion came after I moved to Arizona. And every state has very different rules and laws and policies and procedures in place where working with children with special needs. And here in Arizona, I feel that that's lacking here. There's really a lot of work to be done in that in that field, that modality of care. And so you know, I'm not a special educator. I don't ever claim to be, but I will tell you that I see that there's a need for that there. So it became like my own personal goal, and for me to learn more about that and to see how I can advocate for those children and those families, I felt the need to join the Division for Early Childhood. So those are my professional memberships. And not to say that everyone should be a member of, you know, all of these professional memberships, but like I said, I think that you have to see where your career path is taking you, and then absolutely connect. And I just also want to say that being a member, of course, there's a fee involved in being a member of any professional organization. But what I would also like to say is that you can go on to any one of these websites and there are resources there. And EYC has tons of resources, 0 to 3. If you are studying brain development, they have a baby brain map that's interactive, which is a fabulous tool. So like I said, you know, just check them out and just see. And these are just a few. I mean, these are my interests, but there are so many out there. And again, you know, what are your skills and what are your passions? I think that you have to be driven by where you want to grow. Just like I did with the Division of Early Childhood. You know, like I said before, that was not any interest of mine. You know, it was, you know, something that was out there. I mean, children that were out there that needed, you know, services, and there are professional people that studied that, you know, and that wasn't me. I wasn't one of those people. But when I moved here and I saw how it's really very, very different. And that difference where I saw the lack of support for children with special needs here in Arizona, I felt, you know, I had to do something. So, just think about it. Think about what your needs and your passions are and take it from there. So these are some of the, these are the links to the organizations that I mentioned. And there are others besides the ones that I am, you know, so passionate about. There's also the National Child Care Association. And the National Child Care Association is also an association that has their own accreditation and credentials. And so they have the CCP, which is a Certified Child Care Professional, which is a credential similar to a CDA, which is the Child Development Associate, that comes out of the Council for Professional Recognition. The National Child Care Association also has the NAEYC credential, which is the National Administrator's credential. And interestingly enough, like I had mentioned before, I teach for the City University of New York, and they have their own director's credential. So I think before you investigate, and I know people watching this now are either students or faculty, but if you're a student and you're thinking of going for a credential, I think it's really important to see in your state if that credential is recognized. I know that even though the National Administrator's credential is a national credential, because New York State has their own administrator's credential, they don't recognize it. So it's, it's just a little point of information. The National Child Care Association also has the National Early Childhood Program Accreditation, and that's NECPA. And so, and like NAEYC has their accreditation for early learning programs, and then they also have accreditation of higher learning programs, so it's higher ed. So in fact, Central Arizona College out here, and where I teach here, we are actually going through our reaccreditation process right now. And what NAEYC does is they review and evaluate our early childhood curriculum that we present to students. So, like I said, I'm going to focus on NAEYC, and NAEYC has what they call their foundational documents. And I think that my connection is so strong to NAEYC because when I was in college, which was a long time ago in the 80s, in my very first class, which was Foundations of Early Childhood, the requirement was we had to join NAEYC. And it was a requirement of the course. I mean, if you did not join, you either dropped out of Foundations, you chose a different career path, or you didn't pass the class, because it was believed that the value of a professional organization is something that you should understand from the get-go. I have to say that over my 30 plus years working in the field, I've seen a lot of improvements with regards to respect for the profession. It's not where it should be. I think, unfortunately, during the past 6-7 months when we've been going through this pandemic, I think that early childhood professionals have been recognized as essential workers. I think that uplifted the professional a little bit, but way back in the 80s, we were looked at as babysitters for sure. We taught infants, like infants don't need a teacher. And so I think that, and I'm grateful that in my Foundations class, we were required to become a member, because it just brought another level of professionalism to what we were doing. So NAEYC has these foundational documents, and these are the position statements. They're actually called position statements, and they're used to build an understanding of issues that are faced in early childhood. And so I'm going to start with developmentally appropriate practice, or DAP, because I think that we all know DAP and we've all heard of DAP. And it's just been revised. So it was just put out in 2019 for public comment. And I will tell you that whenever NAEYC is revising their documents and their position statements, they put it out for public comment. So it goes out to the early childhood community. You get a chance as an early childhood professional to read these documents, see what they're putting out there and what they're proposing, and you could comment on them. And so it's up for public comment, and it's in the process of being revised. There are work groups that take on this work, and it's not something that, they put out the statement, they ask for public comment, they come back, they revise it, and that's it. I mean, it's over cycles and it takes time. So the developmentally appropriate practices position statement is in the process of being revised. The professional standards and competencies for early childhood educators. This was a project, I want to say, that probably took 4 or 5 years. And so what this foundational document describes is what early childhood educators need to know. Like, what do we need to know to be a good early childhood professional and to provide quality, high quality services to young children? I mean, we have such, people, at Ashford, I mean, you're going for your associates, you're going for your bachelor's, for your master's, you're at so many different levels. What does it take? What does it take to be a really high quality early childhood professional? So this document actually lays out the competencies that we need to know. What do we need to know about health and safety? What do we need to know about child development? What do we need to know about professionalism and being an advocate? So that's what this document is framing out for us. And so states have their own set of competencies. So like I can tell you, in New York State, we have our core body of knowledge, right? And those are the competencies that we're expected to know as an early childhood professional. In Arizona, we have the workforce knowledge and competencies. So pretty much this professional standards and competency statement it brings it all together for us as a national as a national profession. We should all be knowing the same thing, right? It doesn't really matter if you live in Arizona or if you live in New York or if you live in California or if you live in South Dakota. It doesn't matter. Quality early childhood education is quality, and the competencies and what we need to know should look the same. The next statement is the Code of Ethical Conduct, and that's probably the first statement that I became familiar with. We do have a code of ethics. We are a profession. We do have situations where we're faced with moral and ethical dilemmas. And this is our guide. And it doesn't tell you what you if, well, I had this argument with a parent and I don't know what to do here. It doesn't tell you, well, if your argument is about this or this or this, but it's a guide, and it gives you a framework of how to work through ethical dilemmas. And so, like I said, I think that's the document out of all of their position statements. That's the document that I, as a faculty member, as a CDA instructor, as an early childhood professional supporting programs, is the document that I use more than any other, because it does set the foundation for us to guide us in our work. The next statement is advancing equity in early childhood education, and this statement just speaks to the idea that all children have a right to equitable learning opportunities to help them reach their full potential. And so now this statement, and actually Arizona AEYC, we are preparing for our annual meeting, which is going to be held on October 3rd, and which will be held virtually. So just speaking about it now, you can all come. I can tell you that is the framework for our annual meeting, is the Advancing Equity in Early Childhood Education statement. And we have panelists representing different topic areas within that statement to speak to that. But it's important that we understand, especially now with everything that's going on and the climate that we're faced with today, this is a really, I think this right now is a very, has a lot of impact on how we teach, how we support families, and how, as faculty, we support students. So the next one is the NAEYC Early Childhood Program Standards. And so that speaks to accreditation. And I'm going to talk about that one now. But NAEYC has 10 standards for early childhood programs. And they use these 10 standards as a framework to assess and determine the quality of care that's being provided. The NAEYC accreditation system for early learning programs is a process that I support 100%, 1,000%. I mean, I think next to teaching, that's the work that I'm involved with most of all. And I've supported working in New York. That was a big part of our, what our company did. We did a lot of accreditation support. And I can tell you that over the years, the system has changed, but in my work in New York, I've worked with over 40 programs that have successfully achieved NAEYC accreditation. And right now I'm working with 2 programs out here on Long Island, and actually now a third that I'm supporting in going through the accreditation process. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the accreditation of early learning programs is framed around 10 standards. And you can see these standards here are relationships, and the relationships are between the children and the teachers, between the children and each other, between the children and their families, and between staff and children, and staff with each other. The curriculum is just that. Teaching is teaching practices and strategies that teachers use in their teaching practices. Assessment of child progress is one where I think a lot of programs struggle with because they don't have an assessment system in place. And, doing observations and assessments are really, it's really an important part of the program, of your program. A lot of people think that they just do assessments because they have to do a parent-teacher conference, but that's not true. You're doing observations all the time to inform your lesson planning and planning for the children, both as a group, and as a whole class, but also as an individualized planning. Standard 5 is health, so that looks at hand washing and diapering and toileting, things like that. Standard 6 is the standard that went through the most revisions in the past few years. It used to be called teachers, and that looked at your professional development and your education and things like that. Apparently what was going on was programs were not able to meet those standards. And, unfortunately, the early childhood field is looked upon very differently than, if you're working in a child care program or preschool in an infant toddler center, we're not viewed the same as people who work in a public school, and hopefully in my lifetime I'll see that shift, and it has been shifting. But I will say that NAEYC had high standards for teachers working in the field, and that had to change. So now it doesn't just look, this standard does not just look at your education, but now it looks at your professional development and other workshops and trainings that you have, what the program does to support teachers, orientation, all things like that are part of this standard now. Standard 7 is families, and that looks at, work with your families, how you support them, what opportunities you give to them, things like that. Standard 8 is community relationships, and it takes a village to raise a child, so that's what that looks at. Standard 9 is the physical environment, and so here we're looking at the playground, and we look at it's the physical environment, more of the building and not necessarily of the classrooms. The physical environment of the classrooms is more addressed in the curriculum, in standard 2 curriculum. And then standard 10 is leadership and management. And that's where there's I'll look at your policies, procedures. We look at your family handbook and your staff handbook and your orientation manual and all things that go around what it takes to be a leader. Okay, and so this is the process. It's a 4-step process. The first step is to enroll, and you go through self-study. And so when you enroll, you're actually making a commitment to work on program improvement. And so you're given a self-study guide, and you look at your program, you look and you see what policies you have, what are you missing, what needs to be revised. The programs that I'm working with now, that's exactly what we're doing. We're in self-study, and we're going through a review of policies. And you can have a lot of great policies. And I can tell you that I've worked with a Head Start programs in New York. And, if you're familiar at all with Head Start, they have a policy for everything. And as many policies as they had, and as comprehensive and inclusive those policies were, they were still missing policies, or it wasn't worded correctly, or they were missing pieces of policies. And so this gives you a really great opportunity to look at your policies and your procedures, and to see where you can make improvements. Your second stage or stage 2 is to apply. And here again, now you're applying and you're making the commitment that within 12 months, because now there's a timeline. So within 12 months, you are going to be ready for an accreditation visit. And so here, again, you're refining those policies. You're pretty much still in self-study. And, you're looking to see, and I'm going to give you examples from, the work I'm doing right now. You're looking to see that you have enough materials in diversity, to meet that diversity criteria. You look to see that your child abuse policy protects the rights of your employees and the children. So you're using that magnifying glass, and you're really taking a closer look at who you have working for you, what their practices and procedures are, and what your policies are. The third stage is that now you're ready. So now you're going to put in, and you're going to be a candidate for a site visit, and the NAEYC will have an assessor come out. They'll review your program. They have, they'll give you a window, and you give them a schedule when you're open, and now as an FYI now, all accreditation visits are put on hold, and all programs that were in this 12-month window are now given an extension because they're not making any site visits. But somebody will come out, they will review, they will do an observation in half of your classrooms of each age group. So if you have 3 infant rooms, they will observe 2. If you have 4 toddler rooms, they'll observe 2. If you have 6 preschool rooms, they will observe 3 of them. So they'll observe half of your classrooms. They will also observe the grounds and the building. Then they will also do a review of your classroom portfolios and your program portfolio. And they only review the portfolios of the classrooms where they observed. And then stage 4 is to maintain your accreditation. Once you get it, you're responsible for doing a report annually. Any changes to staff, administration has to be reported. If you get a serious violation from your state licensing regulator, that has to be reported, and then that will be followed up with a visit. NAEYC does say that they make random visits, and I can tell you that in all the years I'm doing this, I only heard of one time where a program received a visit unannounced, and that was because the assessor had scheduled an accreditation site visit, and they come from out of town, and it was canceled. at the last minute, there was an emergency situation and it got canceled. So instead of, just going back to her home, she ended up visiting a few of the accredited centers in the area. So that was the only time I ever heard of a surprise visit from an accreditation assessor. So that's that. I guess I'll just take questions at the end. So this is a sample of a classroom portfolio. And, I have to tell you that classroom staff really get excited when they're doing this. They really appreciate that they're able to give themselves credit for what they are doing on a daily basis. And so the 1C6 show or describe 2 examples of how you make children's play, I can't see it on my screen, it's blocked, more complex. And so this is from a program, a preschool portfolio, and they get to put photos and they get to put in a description. And so here you can see we added people to the block center to help make the children's play more complex. The children placed the people around the fence so they could watch what is happening in the pool. And those are the words from the children. And so the teachers get to document the things that they do. There's the criteria that has to be represented in classroom portfolios. And I can tell you that after a site visit, if a classroom is not chosen to be one of the classrooms to be observed, the teachers get really upset because the assessor is not looking at their portfolio. And they're so proud of the work that they do, because it really is giving yourselves credit for what you're doing every day. And it's a great thing, because I can tell you that people have taken these classroom portfolios, you could do it in several different ways. We've always done hard copies. Right now, the programs that I'm working with, we're doing digital copies. So we're doing them in a PowerPoint format, but they will be printed out, and people have taken their portfolios and used them as marketing tools, because parents don't know all of the great things that you're doing, and they don't know the value of making, putting some people in a block area and what that really means to children's play and how it's extending their learning. So this is an example of the classroom portfolio, and the biggest standard in the classroom portfolio is standard 2, which is curriculum. And so there's lots of photos and lots of descriptions on how teachers work with children and help them meet goals throughout their play. The program portfolio, on the other hand, is more of policies and procedures. And so in a program portfolio, the standard that needs the most evidence with the most criteria is standard 10, which is leadership and management. And so this criteria 10D3 comes out of that standard 10, show that you follow government child nutrition guidelines for the amount and types of food provided to children for meals and snacks. And so this program, and there's a description here, the ELC, which is the Early Learning Center, follows USDA's child meal patterns and types of food to be provided to children for all meals and snacks accordingly. So this is the first page of this criteria. The next slide, which I didn't include, has a copy of their menu. So their menu is highlighted that shows these servings. So that's just an example of the program portfolio. The program portfolio, like I said, is more policies. There are some photos that they use for documentation, but it's mostly policies and procedures. Let's see, how am I doing on time here? Okay, then there's the accreditation of higher education programs. And so here there's 6 standards, and they're framed around key elements. And so the key elements are equivalent to like the criteria in the accreditation for early learning programs. And so these are the 6 standards: promoting child development and learning. Standard 2 is building family and community relationships. Standard 3 is observing and documenting and assessing to support young children and families. Standard 4 is using developmentally effective practice. Standard 5 is using content knowledge to build meaningful curriculum. And Standard 6 is becoming a professional. So these standards are the standards that we have to form key assessments around when we are teaching. So currently in Arizona here, I'm teaching observations and assessments. And so I have introduced certain tools for the teachers to use, and those tools align with the key elements in Standard 3. So, for example, they're using they are given information on they're given information on the ASQ, Ages and Stages questionnaire, right? And so that's an assessment tool, or not an assessment tool, that's a screening tool used within the first 45 days of enrollment. And it's done with the parents. And so that is one way to screen a child, and that's part of the process of assessment. So when the assessor comes in to evaluate the program of higher education, and like I said, we're in process right now for our reaccreditation, they're going to come in and they're going to look at the assignments that I give. They're going to look at how I meet the key elements. They're going to speak to students. They're going to go through all of that. They're going to look at my assignments. They're going to look at the work that's submitted. And, you know, we have to have a rubric for everything. So that's how they assess and accredit and award accreditation of higher learning programs. Let's see. NAEYC also has interest forums, and so their interest forums are called Hello, and Hello is a platform that they use for online communities. NAEYC has very many interest forums, and so here again I'm going to go back to knowing what your passion is and knowing what your interests are. Right now I want to say in like 4 or 5 interest forums. Of course, the infant toddler interest forum, the diversity and equity education of adults interest forum. They have interest forums for science and math and ethics. I'm in that interest forum, infant toddler, family child care. So again, you know, if you navigate through the NAEYC website and you look up their interest forums, that's another great way. I mean, I just got a lot of resources that I'm using in my work through one of the Hello interest forums. Week of the Young Child. Next year, it's April 10th to 16th. This year, it kind of got, it was recognized, but it just wasn't celebrated the way it typically is. NAEYC has you know, they do special things for kids. It's just to recognize children and their families during this week in April. If you go on their website, they have different events planned for different days. They have a planning tool that you can use. They do Music Monday and Tasty Tuesday and Work Together Wednesday, Artsy Thursday, and Family Friday. So there's a focus for each of the days, and those are their suggestions. You don't have to follow them, but it's a wonderful way to get to have children appreciated, young children appreciated. Here in Arizona, what we did this year was we got proclamations from the different mayors throughout the state, and they, you know, they issued us beautiful certificates, and it was recognized on our website. And I think for me right now, the most important thing is advocacy, and NAEYC is my go-to for advocacy. Their initiative, America for Early Ed, has been around for probably 5-6 years now. If you go on their website, they will, you can get their federal and state agendas to learn more about, you know, their initiatives, how you can be an advocate to help get federal funding, state funding, building an early childhood workforce. All of these things are really will really make a difference. And you know, I did talk a lot about providing quality care to children and families, but we can't forget about our workforce. And you know, it's a known fact. I mean, people who work in early childhood are underpaid. You do it because it's your passion. You do it because you love it, and not because you're going to be rich and retire early. You know, that's not what this field is about. But you know, our workforce is underappreciated. And like I said before, I think in these times they're recognizing that we are essential workforce, and you know, without us, people can't go to work, and so we should be recognized for that. So there are a lot of initiatives. The Children's Champions is another one. So advocacy is you know, you have a voice. Everybody has a voice, and I think that even if 1/10 of the people that I talk to would use their voice, I think that would make a big difference. Because, you know, of course you want 100%, but and you know, it doesn't even really mean, you know, it sounds intimidating, but it really shouldn't be, because it can be as simple as just forwarding a post from your local AEYC, from your state affiliate, that talks about advocacy. And you don't even have to say a word. You just have to click the share button, and you're just getting the message out. So it could be as simple as that. Any little thing that we do to support early childhood education is wonderful. And so this is my advocacy here. And so I mentioned before that we had that early childhood day at the legislature, and these are my students. And what we did was, it was a 2-day event. We had the day at the legislature, but the day before, what we provided was we provided a session on how to be an advocate, what to expect when you sit in front of a room with state representatives, how you ask for things, how you provide data to make sure that your ask is worthy. Yesterday, I participated in a webinar that gave a lot of data, and you know, part of that data was, in Arizona, 38% of the childcare programs in Arizona are operating at 38% capacity. And meanwhile, the cost of running the program has increased by 49%. And so that's not a win-win situation at all. And we're struggling to keep programs in business. So we have to think of something and think of ways on how to support those programs. And it's all about funding. And so when you have statistics and data like that, that you could present to, you know, a constituent, a representative, a senator, anybody, you know, it backs up your request. It's not because, you know, hey, I like little kids and they need money to run the program. It's not about that. It's keeping the workforce alive. And here's the links to the position statements that I spoke about: the developmentally appropriate practice position statement, power to the profession, which I think is definitely worth a read, code of ethical conduct, and advancing equity in early childhood education. And that is it. So if anybody has any questions, or hi there, I see you.
Wonderful job, Camille. Yes, anyone who has questions can come online, or you can jump in the chat box and we can respond. And Camille is here for you. She is full of so much wonderful information and all of those organizations that she's a part of, and just everything she knows about accreditation. So if you have any questions, now is the time to ask.
So I can tell you, if as I talk, maybe it might prompt some questions. I can tell you that depending on your state, if you have a state affiliate of NAEYC and you are interested in accreditation, some states do accreditation facilitation work, and it comes through the state affiliate. And so I know here in Arizona, we don't have a formal accreditation facilitation project going on, but we work with our sister affiliate, SASE, and together what we do is we go and we support programs. So currently I have I'm working with a program, and it's actually a lab school on a community college, and they are going through the accreditation process. They're in that window where now they're kind of not sure of the timing because everything has been put on hold, and they're working on their classroom portfolios. And so we need, I need to go in and help them. Everything is being done virtually. And so, you know, we're just helping them through the accreditation process and helping them to, you know, gather their evidence. Sometimes people don't understand the criteria, like what are they looking for here, you know? And so it's just a matter of giving guidance. And I typically would have gone into a program and you know, did an observation and looked around and, you know, offered, you know, suggestions. Now, of course, that's not happening, but we're doing a lot of stuff virtually, which is great. People are sending me their portfolios because they're opted to do it in a PowerPoint format. So they're, you know, we're doing virtual meetings. We're going, you know, sharing screens, doing a little tour, walking through a program if they're open. A lot of programs have not been open. And so my two programs here on the college campuses, they just reopened a month ago. And so everything that they were doing from home. And, you know, yeah, they had a lot of pictures and they had stuff, but they didn't have everything. And so we had to wait for them to reopen to get back in. And now the classrooms look so different. Classrooms don't look the same because there is not as many materials out. There are hand washing stations everywhere. You know, it looks very different. So, questions? No questions, huh? Not seeing any.
Perfect. Well, if there aren't any questions, Camille, thank you again so much for being here today. We appreciate you and your professionalism and everything that you do for Ashford, because I know that you teach our students also. So everyone, thank you for spending time with us a little bit on your Wednesday, and we will see you next month. So watch for the invite. Thank you.
Thank you so much.